Single dad helped a lost girl find her mom hours later. He met the billionaire mother. Daniel Carter's life had been shaped by loss long before that winter evening. After his wife passed away, the world did not slow down for his grief, and neither could he. Bills still arrived, lunches still needed to be packed, and two little girls still woke up every morning, needing a father who could hold everything together even when he felt like falling apart. Emma, 7 years old, carried a quiet maturity in her eyes, as if she had learned too early that life did not always ask for permission before changing. Lily, 4, was still soft and hopeful, clinging to her father's hand like it was the safest place on earth. Daniel lived for them. Every decision he made, every sacrifice he accepted, was shaped around one promise to never let them feel abandoned, even if he himself felt that way sometimes. That evening, he had taken them to the amusement park because he wanted them to remember joy, not the kind that comes from toys or gifts, but the kind that stays in your memory long after childhood fades. The park was alive with lights and laughter, the air sharp with winter cold, and music drifting from every direction. Daniel walked between his daughters, Emma close on one side and Lily gripping his hand on the other, constantly scanning the crowd. He was always alert, always watching. Being a single parent had taught him that safety was never something to take lightly. As they passed near the carousel, Daniel noticed a small girl standing alone by the fence. She couldn't have been more than 5 years old. Her eyes were wide and glassy, scanning the sea of faces with growing panic. She took a few steps forward, then stopped, clearly unsure of where to go. Daniel slowed, his instincts immediately alert. He had seen that look before in hospital waiting rooms. In Emma's eyes, the night her mother didn't come home. Fear that hadn't yet found its voice. People walked past the girl, assuming she belonged to someone else, assuming someone else would step in. Daniel didn't. He knelt in front of her, keeping his voice calm and steady. He asked her name. Sophie, he asked where her mom was. She shook her head, her lips trembling as tears finally spilled over. Daniel gently reassured her, telling her she wasn't alone, that he would help her. He positioned Emma and Lily close to him, making sure they felt secure too, and then began asking nearby staff for help. Announcements were made. Security was alerted. Time stretched painfully. As the minutes passed, Sophie grew more frightened. Lily began to whimper from the cold and exhaustion, and Emma leaned quietly against Daniel's side. Sensing the seriousness of the situation, Daniel's heart raced, but he kept his voice calm, his movements slow. Panic would only make things worse. He told Sophie stories, asked her questions, kept her focus on his face so she wouldn't feel swallowed by the crowd. Inside, he felt the weight of responsibility pressing hard against his chest. Finally, near the park's main entrance, a woman came running through the crowd. Her hair was disheveled, her face pale, eyes red and frantic. The moment Sophie saw her, she screamed her mother's name and ran forward. The woman collapsed to her knees, clutching her daughter like she might disappear again. She cried openly, shaking, overwhelmed with relief. Security surrounded them, voices overlapping, questions flying. In the chaos, the woman barely looked at Daniel. She thanked him quickly, her voice breaking, before being guided away with Sophie still clinging to her. Daniel stood there quietly, his job done. He didn't expect gratitude or recognition. To him, this wasn't heroism, it was instinct. He gathered his daughters and left the park, their laughter replaced with tired silence. At home, he went through the familiar routine: dinner, homework, bedtime stories. As he tucked Lily into bed and kissed Emma's forehead, he didn't realize that his life had already brushed against something much larger than he could imagine. Hours later, a knock echoed through his small house. Daniel frowned, checking the clock. It was late. He assumed it was a neighbor or perhaps someone from the building management. When he opened the door, he was met with a woman whose presence felt almost unreal. She stood tall and composed, dressed elegantly, but her eyes betrayed exhaustion and something deeper, gratitude mixed with urgency. She spoke his name carefully, as if afraid she had the wrong person. Her name was Victoria Hale. Daniel recognized the name instantly, though he had never seen her in person. She was one of the most powerful businesswomen in the country, a billionaire known for her sharp decisions and unbreakable control. Yet standing in his doorway, she looked nothing like the headlines. She looked like a mother who had come too close to losing her child. Victoria explained how security footage and staff accounts had led her to him. She said she hadn't been able to thank him properly at the park, that everything had happened too fast. Daniel stepped aside and let her in, unsure what else to do. Behind him, Emma and Lily peeked around the corner, curiosity and caution in their eyes. Victoria noticed them immediately, her gaze softening. She looked around the modest living room, the worn furniture, the framed family photos, the small signs of a life built with effort rather than excess. For a moment, she said nothing. Daniel felt uncomfortable, out of place in her presence. But he didn't break the silence. Eventually, Victoria spoke. She said losing Sophie, even for that short time, had shaken her in a way nothing else ever had. She admitted that despite everything she owned, control had been an illusion. That night had exposed how fragile life truly was. Daniel listened without interruption. He didn't judge her, and he didn't flatter her. When she finished, he simply said that any parent would have done the same. Victoria's eyes filled with tears because she knew that wasn't true. Many people had walked past her daughter that night. Daniel hadn't. She stayed longer than she intended, talking about Sophie, about motherhood, about fear. Daniel spoke little, but when he did, his words carried honesty. He talked about raising his daughters alone, about the nights he questioned whether he was enough, about the promise he had made to himself after his wife died. Victoria listened, really listened, in a way few people ever had. When she finally stood to leave, the air between them felt heavy with something unspoken. She thanked him again, this time with sincerity that went beyond words. As she walked out into the cold night, Daniel closed the door and leaned against it, unaware that this meeting was only the beginning. He didn't know that a simple act of kindness had quietly opened a door neither of them could close again. Victoria did not expect to return to Daniel's house, yet she found herself thinking about it constantly. In boardrooms filled with glass walls and controlled silence, her mind drifted back to the warmth of that modest living room, to the way Daniel had listened without fear or flattery, and to the quiet strength in his daughter's eyes. For years, Victoria Hale had lived in a world where every interaction was measured, every word calculated. Gratitude was usually transactional. Kindness often had a price. But Daniel had wanted nothing from her, not recognition, not money, not even acknowledgement. That unsettled her more than any crisis ever had. A week later, Victoria returned, this time with Sophie. She told herself it was only right that Sophie thank the man who had stayed with her when she was afraid. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. Sophie ran ahead as soon as the door opened, recognizing Lily and Emma instantly. Children had a way of remembering safety. Daniel watched as the girls sat together on the floor, laughing, sharing toys, as if they had known each other far longer than a single night. Victoria stood quietly, observing, for the first time in years. She did not feel the urge to check her phone or control the moment. She simply stayed. As the days passed, their meetings became more frequent. Sometimes it was just coffee and conversation. Other times, the children played while Daniel and Victoria talked about life honestly, without armor. Victoria spoke of a childhood shaped by ambition rather than affection, of a marriage that had been built on image instead of intimacy, and of a career that demanded everything but gave little back when it came to love. Daniel spoke of grief that never fully disappeared, of exhaustion that came from being both parents at once, and of the fear that one day his daughters might resent the life he could give them. There was no competition between their struggles, only understanding. Still, doubt lingered. Daniel was painfully aware of the distance between their worlds. Victoria's life was watched, documented, analyzed. His was quiet, private, fragile in its simplicity. He worried about what her presence might bring into his daughters. Live scrutiny, disappointment, instability. He had worked too hard to build a safe environment to risk it lightly. So when rumors began to surface, photographs taken from a distance, speculation whispered through business circles, Daniel pulled back. He told Victoria that maybe it was better to stop before things became complicated. Victoria did not argue immediately. Instead, she went home and sat alone in her vast apartment, surrounded by luxury that suddenly felt hollow. She thought about Sophie laughing on Daniel's living room floor, about the way Emma helped Lily without being asked, about the calm Daniel carried even when he was clearly tired. For the first time, Victoria questioned the life she had built, not as a success, but as a shelter that had kept real connection out. The next day, she canceled meetings, postponed deals, and made a decision that terrified her more than any financial risk ever had. She went back to Daniel not to convince him, but to be honest. She told him she was tired of choosing safety over meaning. She admitted she was afraid, not of losing status or money, but of waking up one day and realizing she had missed her daughter's childhood completely. Daniel listened, conflicted. He wanted to protect his family, but he also couldn't ignore what was growing between them. Not romance alone, but trust. The kind that forms when two people see each other clearly and choose to stay anyway. Change did not come easily. Victoria faced backlash at work. Advisors questioned her priorities. Investors expressed concern. But she began making deliberate choices: fewer late nights, fewer flights, more school events, more quiet dinners with Sophie. She showed up. Slowly, Sophie changed too. She laughed more freely, slept more peacefully, and stopped clinging so tightly. No longer afraid that her mother would disappear into work, Daniel watched all of this from a careful distance. He never asked for anything. He never leaned on Victoria's wealth. When she offered help, he accepted only what felt respectful, never allowing imbalance to define their connection. Over time, his fear softened. His daughters were happier. His home felt alive again. And one evening, as the four children played together, Daniel realized that the laughter filling his house no longer carried guilt, it carried hope. One night, after the children had fallen asleep, Daniel and Victoria sat quietly, the weight of everything they had avoided finally resting between them. Victoria asked him what scared him most. Daniel answered honestly. He said he feared failing again, failing his daughters, letting someone in only to watch everything fall apart. Victoria told him she feared being too late, that Sophie might grow up remembering her mother as someone who was always absent, even when she was physically present. They didn't promise forever. They didn't rush into declarations. Instead, they chose something simpler and harder: consistency, day by day, choice by choice. Victoria learned that power did not come from control, but from presence. Daniel learned that strength did not mean carrying everything alone, and the children learned without needing words. That family could be formed not only by blood, but by care. The story did not end with wealth transforming hardship or love erasing pain. It continued in ordinary moments: school mornings, shared meals, quiet conversations after long days. The night Daniel helped a lost girl find her mother was never remembered as a miracle. It was remembered as a decision, a moment when someone stopped, paid attention, and chose compassion. And from that moment, 4 lives slowly reshaped themselves, not into perfection, but into something real, lasting, and deeply human.